Take each game and its merits there.
Hello, and you're very welcome to Series 2 of Each Game on Its Merits, a podcast where myself, Aon O'Riordan, and...
Hello, I'm Jerry Farrell.
Goes through every single FAI Senior Men's International from the emergence of the FAI as a separate soccer federation up until the present day. So we've actually made ourselves all the way to 1934. We've covered the first effectively 10 years of international football that the FAI were involved in, Jerry, and now we are turning our attention to a December fixture in 1934 between Ireland and Hungary. And this is actually kind of it's kind of handy that we can reference Hungary, because earlier this year yourself and myself got to speak before the Hungary friendly in Dublin to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Olympic team that made it to Paris to play in the Olympics, and also to recognise the fact that they are now senior internationals as bestowed by the FAI. So we were chuffed to be able to do that. Yeah,
we were part of the centenary committee that worked with ourselves, the likes of Ty Carey, Paul Lennon, Gary Spain and others, and the folks in the FAI to get those players recognised. And we were lucky that we were able to track down family members of every player involved, and the coach Charlie Harris. And we even had, amazingly, considering this tournament took place 100 years ago, there's still a couple of children of Paddy Riley, the goalkeeper, and Johnny Murray, the winger who played in those games, are still alive and with us today. I know Paddy Riley's children are able to attend, and lots of grandchildren, great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren. And what really struck me as well, Ian, was that so many of those family members are still involved in football, often at a very high level as well.
But I think names in other codes are more famous than players who wore the green for Ireland 100 years ago, and we need to correct that, because the history of this game is incredibly important, and the pride those families had in their names of their grandfathers, fathers, uncles, great uncles, was being remembered in that way was really, really important. So it now means that the first senior soccer international officially was in 1924. Those 4 games played in 24, and that win average has now been improved. And now we have officially, the Irish soccer history has to say that we reached the last stage of the World Championships twice, because it was effectively the World Championships in 1924. So poor El Paki Bonner, he doesn't have that honour to hang around his neck anymore. He was at the event, and he was lovely. So we're mentioning that because that was a friendly against Hungary that was played earlier this year. We're talking about a friendly against Hungary in 1934, December 1934. I suppose we have emphasised the fact up until this point that the Irish team, the FAI Irish team, kind of played one game a year, and I'm interested in what kind of fan base or interest was there genuinely in this sort of game. Was the Irish team getting a type of a tribal support, or were people still probably focused on their club sides, and this was a bit of an oddity? But as we move into the 30s, the Irish team are playing more matches. They're now playing World Cup qualifiers, which is still probably a bit of an oddity for your average fan, and now they're playing about 3 games a year. So it's not just a one-off game here and there. It's now it's becoming more of a feature in Irish sporting life. And even though this is a December game, you've got 2 interesting pieces of information. One is a special train journey special from Belfast, which is interesting because clearly the game's on a Sunday, so probably in that era only people of a certain faith would have actually come down, Catholics effectively, because those of a Protestant faith wouldn't be encouraged to enjoy a sporting occasion on a Sunday, and also rules and regulations around fruit selling. So while researching for the podcast, I came across a few interesting kind of tidbits. But the Great Northern Railway, obviously, were sending trains into what's now Connolly Station, would have just been then known as Amiens Street Station. I'll read the ad here. Irish Free State versus Hungary at Dairymount Park, Dublin, Sunday 16th of December, cheap day excursion. And the train departs from Belfast at 9 o'clock and calls at Lurgan, Portadown, Armagh and Besbrook. And it's 7 shillings 6 for third class return. So that's Ryanair, I would say.
Yes, and there are first and second class tickets at correspondingly cheap fares, it says.
Okay.
Mr. J.B. Stevens is the general manager, and he's obviously promoting this as a day outing for people to come down from Belfast or indeed Lurgan, Portadown, Armagh to see.
There's no player in this team from from the north.
Well, we'll come on to that.
We'll come on to that. Okay, sorry. Well, they're not playing for a club from the north, so
yes.
But still, there is obviously a sense that fans from the north will be interested in supporting or at least seeing this game.
And as you say, sport in the six counties is still very much a Sabbatarian sort of thing, and it's very divisive. There's a lot of incidents, coming up to even like the 1958 World Cup. There's a worry on behalf of the IFA that they might be drawn to play a game on a Sunday, and that would affect their players who are strict Sabbatarians. League games and international games are not played on Sundays in Belfast or anywhere in the north.
But they're also only really playing against England, Scotland.
Exactly, and that was the other point I was going to make, is that continental opposition don't really play in Belfast. So if you wanted to see a Hungary or a Switzerland or a Germany or an Italy, you have to go to Dublin. You have to go to Dublin.
Right.
And Hungary, of course, and we'll come on to this, are a bit of a big deal. They've beaten England earlier this year in Budapest 2-1.
Right.
This isn't quite the Wembley, the Magic Magyars of 1953 yet, but England are now beginning to lose games on continental tours in the 30s. They're losing to teams like Spain. They're losing to teams like Hungary.
So everybody else is catching up with them.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Hungary get to the quarterfinals of the World Cup in 1934.
They were expected to win it, I think.
They're one of the favourites. So them and kind of Italy are among the favourites, as are Austria, but they're actually knocked out by the Austrian Wunder team. Have very great stylish players. Matthias Sindelar.
Never underestimate the old Austrians. Yeah.
No, indeed. Yeah. So there is a big draw, and one of the other mentions you gave there is that very strict control of I suppose selling of fruit. So this is a public newspaper notice saying, notice to fruit sellers, only those holding Bohemian FC permits will be allowed to enter the ground with one basket only, provided they apply before 1 o'clock on Sunday. Permits are to be produced by stewards if required, and there is an official match programme on sale for the day.
Like your season ticket.
Yes, indeed.
Of course, you're a member.
Yeah.
I just have a mere season ticket. Anyway, go on.
But yeah, they made a big deal that they were going to have a match programme for the Hungary match, and it was on sale for the nominal price of a penny.
Nominal price?
Yes, so obviously they're trying to incentivise people to buy a match programme, and
all part
or maybe they got a very good print deal. Who knows?
All part of the occasion.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go into the team now. All right. So apologies for my glasses. 25,000 people show up. It's Dalymount Park. It's the 16th of December, 1934, a Sunday. Okay, the referee is from Belgium. It's a 4-2 loss. But anyway, the team. Jim Foley from Glasgow Celtic is his third cap. Paddy Gaskins from Shamrock Rovers, it's his third cap. Paddy Birmingham from James's Gate, it's his first cap. Paddy O'Kane from Bohemians, it's his first cap. Charlie Lennon from James's Gate, it's his first cap. Fred Horlicker from Bohemians, it's his fifth. Now Griffiths from Warsaw, his name is Bob Griffiths. Yeah, Warsaw. It's his first cap. Joey Donnelly from Dundalk, it's his first cap. Alf Rigby from James's Gate, it's his first cap. Paddy Moore from Aberdeen, it's his fifth. Bill Fallon from Notts County, first cap. Basically, all but, did you say four are lining out for the first time?
So Moore, Gaskins, Foley and Horlicher are the only ones who've actually played for Ireland
Gaskins is the captain.
Paddy Gaskins is the captain. The referee you mentioned, the Belgian guy, is John Longinus, the man who had the distinction of refereeing the first ever World Cup final. He's the referee in Uruguay in 1930.
Right.
2 years prior to that, he also refereed the FAI Cup final between Drumcondra and Bohemians.
Really?
Yes. So
how did we manage that?
Well, basically because the League of Ireland fans did not trust Irish referees to do a good job.
Well, bloody right.
So we generally brought over a lad from England, but he had refereed a couple of kind of high profile games prior to even doing the World Cup. So
he's not kind of horrified by the antics of your average game in the 1920s?
There are some
the odd gunshot, the odd...
Well, he was fine, and look, he was refereeing in Montevideo, where there were actual threats on his life in 1930.
Right.
Ireland, I think, was a walk in the park for him.
Okay.
I think some of the English referees got on the receiving end of some very intimidatory and partisan language and threats, and there's different stories about the referees usually put up in the Central Hotel on Exchequer Street, and people knocking on doors in the middle of the night, issuing dark threats to them over.
We don't approve of that. We
don't
approve of that on this podcast. Right. So it says here, I have again, we're going to refer heavily from Ireland on the Ball, which is goes through every game Ireland ever played by Donald Cullen, and also Free Staters, also written by Donald Cullen, the Republic of Ireland soccer team, 1921 to 39. So it says, despite the scoreline, Hungary did not live up to their reputation. One criticism of the recent World Cup was that football was sacrificed for the sake of winning. This was certainly true for Hungary, who relished the rough stuff.
It's an interesting
Ireland
one.
lacked pace, it says here.
Yes. So when you read the match report, so just the background of Hungary coming over, we mentioned in some of the previous episodes, and you've mentioned there at the start of the programme, we're having difficulty getting games. So we kind of go cap in hand to FIFA and saying, look...
Because England, Scotland and Wales don't want to know.
Yes. And there's still, and we'll come on to this, there's still an awful lot of bad blood between ourselves and the IFA, and also with the FA. The release of players is very difficult. You've given that team there, really, apart from Bob Griffiths, who's playing for Walsall in the 3rd division, the only other players who were released are Paddy Moore, who's not getting his game at Aberdeen, and we'll talk about why that is. And
that's for non-footballing reasons. It's his lifestyle is catching up with him, I think.
Yeah. And Jim Foley, who's the second choice keeper for Celtic, and Celtic are happy to let him play.
Okay.
So Hungary, we go to FIFA and say, look, can you help us get other countries to come and play us? We're struggling here. We're FIFA members, and in fairness, FIFA do a bit of the legwork for us. They encourage other nations to play us.
Right.
And as we see, and as you mentioned, we're going to get more and more games, 3-4 games a year from kind of now on up until the outbreak of war.
In order to get a game, though, I'm assuming we have to be a bit more generous with the gate receipts and putting up of teams. And
so, as you say, 25,000 turn up for this match, and it's kind of the average price is somewhere between 5 and 6 shillings for the stand, and a bit less if you're a standing terrace, so 2 to 3 shillings.
Right.
And then obviously there's concessions for schoolboys and so on. We pay Hungary a guaranteed fee of £700.
Oof.
So even with 25,000 in daily amount, the profit to the FAI is less than £200. So it's not, even though you get a very good crowd in daily amount, it's not a real money spinner. And as you say, you have trains coming down from Belfast, people coming from all over.
They're probably trying to still establish this team and this and knowing that there's another Ireland team under the the banner of the IFA, that it's important for them to have fixtures, have them in daily amount, have them in Dublin. So the profit would obviously be important, but it's more about establishing the principle, if you like, of internationals in Dublin.
And Hungary are a big name, as we say. They've just beaten England. That's going to be very prominent in the minds of the Irish sporting public. This is a team that's beaten England. England are the great and the good of world football.
Yeah.
So it's a big deal to bring them over. And as you say, it's a very experimental team. A few, I suppose, threads we talked about before. Substitutions aren't really common in the game, but Hungary make 2 and try to make 3 in this game. Ireland don't, and we suffer the consequences because
good old plucky Ireland playing by the rules, done in by the Hungarians.
And there's a mention there of Hungary being a bit rough and ready,
and a dodgy but Belgian referee.
Yes. Well, in fairness, he's the Pierluigi Collina of his day.
Okay.
But
for younger listeners,
he was a guy who looked big, bald Italian referee, looked like the guy from the Hills of Eyes.
Yeah.
Anyway, great ref.
Okay. Will I give the match report?
Go on.
All right. So Ireland begin well and forced 4 corners in the first 15 minutes, which is clearly an indication of some kind of dominance. Pressure did not yield a goal, and on 18 minutes, O'Kane was penalised, who was at the back, a Bohemians player, for what looked like a good tackle. As the Irish protested, the free kick was quickly taken and came to Kitkos, who crossed in for Avar to score. We're 1-0 down. On 28 minutes, Foley came to punch away a corner, but was challenged by Vince, who forced him to fist the ball into the roof of net for the Hungarian second. There does seem to be a theme of rough and tumble in the box, keepers getting hammered, players getting knocked unconscious. It's not let's call back to our previous episode. Which Paddy Moore does this to the Dutch keeper. He does.
That goal is allowed.
Right.
A few months later, we do the same thing happens to us. Foley gets pushed into the net and knocks the ball in.
Right.
And we protest. So we're not being consistent, but
okay, so it seems to be so that was the reference, I think, for the rough tactics. 7 minutes later, following a brilliant passing movement involving Rigby, Donnelly and Fallon. I'm getting excited here. Donnelly reduced the arrears when he knocked home from Fallon's low cross. Okay, so how are we doing now? We're like 3-1. Is it 2-1? 2-1. The start of the second half was delayed as Gaskins protested the use of 3 subs by Hungary. In the start, only Zabo was allowed, but another sub also stayed on. Avar had to resume instead of Sotti. So
they've subbed the goalie and 1 outfield player at half time.
Bit of messing going on here. Okay,
bit of squad rotation.
Hungary began well second half, but gradually the Irish got on top and equalised. when Sternberg handled a headed pass by Moore to Rigby and Birmingham scored from the resulting penalty. So it's 2-2, right? That's not too bad. They get their last 2 goals in the 83rd and 85th minutes. So 10 minutes to go, it's actually 2-2. So the 4-2 scoreline kind of belies the fact that we're well in this with 10 minutes to go, and they've made a number of substitutions and we haven't.
Yeah, and Paddy Moore has a knock and is going off for treatment. Gaskins has a knock and is kind of playing on bravely. So
plucky.
Yeah, so we really have only by the end, when they scored their 2 goals in the last 6 minutes, we have one player off the pitch getting treatment, and another who's kind of walking wounded.
It says it here. Further Irish pressure looked like bringing victory, but on 65 minutes, Moore was carried off injured. Carried off, but not substituted.
Because this is the point.
We were down to 10 men for the last half hour.
Yeah, so if you remember when we were talking before, substitutions are kind of like on an agreed basis, but can't be made after half time. So if you're going to make changes, you can change the keeper up to half time.
Right. So if you're going to do somebody in, do it in the second half. Yeah. Clearly, all right? Because the guy's not going to be able to continue.
If you're a bit of a... Yeah.
Oh, man.
If you're a master of the dark arts.
of Irish football fans who are horrified about being done in the 70s and 80s by Bulgarians and, dodgy referees in Belgium and stuff. And now we have to uncover all this nonsense. It's a friendly in December of 1934, and it's haunting me already.
Yes.
All right, okay, so...
And they're coming after one of our star players, Moore.
Carried off injured, while Gaskins was also injured, but played on gallantly. But on 83 minutes, Jerry...
Yes.
Avar scored with a fine low shot. And 2 minutes later, a misunderstanding in the Irish defence.
Yeah. I've seen those.
Yes. Allowed Marcos to run through and score a fourth, and that's that now.
Yeah.
4-2, home defeat, gallant performance against the odds, down to 10 men, down to 9.5 men really. But again, we lose out in what appears to be a kind of a game which is relatively high scoring in this period of time. The games tend to have a good number of goals in them. Yeah,
and 4-2. I mean, Paddy Birmingham is he's making his debut. He scores a penalty on his debut. He's one of the older players. He's actually 30, I think, making his debut there. Joey Donnelly, who we should mention. So Donnelly is, some would argue maybe up there with Steve Staunton and one or two others, probably the greatest player ever to come out of Dundalk. He was Dundalk's record goal scorer up until last year when Pat Hooban broke his goal scoring record.
He was the record that he was broken. Okay.
And that's even more impressive when you consider that for most of his later career, Donnelly actually played in a more defensive midfield role.
Right.
So he's a smashing player. He's played for Dundalk. He's gone up to Belfast where he's been a star with Belfast Celtic, won everything with them. He's come back to Dundalk.
Is that your Belfast reference then? So some people may have a kind of a connection with him. If you're a Belfast football fan, you may want to see him play.
And here's the other one. Bill... or sometimes Willie Fallon, as he's referred to, who's the winger who's playing for Notts County in the second division in England.
I have him here,
yeah. So second division now, the championship as we'd call it. He's kind of listed in most match reports as being a Dubliner, and he's another guy who maybe fudges his age. He's listed being born in 1915, which would make him 19 here. He's actually born in 1912, so he's about 22. But he's born in Larne, not Dublin. His family moved to Dublin when he's a small child, so he grows up in Dublin, but he's actually born in Larne. So he's
Larne, the footballing metropolis.
Footballing metropolis, who were true to the conference
league.
now.
Yeah, no messing there. Okay, so he's actually an ordinary.
Yeah,
but may speak with a Dublin accent.
Yeah, I'd say it looks like he moved to Dublin when he's 2 or 3 years old. So he's almost certainly speaking with a Dublin accent. And he goes over. We'll come on to him a bit more. He has a very good career for Notts County and later for Sheffield Wednesday. And then during the war, he comes back and basically enlists in the Irish Army. But while he's here and during the emergency. He also plays for Shamrock Rovers in Shelbourne and has a very successful time here. And on that note, I just kind of wanted to mention one player who we did mention there, which is Bob Griffiths.
Yes.
And if people kind of look up this match and
is this one cap wonder?
He's a one cap wonder, and we often kind of forget about these players, even though to win a cap for your country is no mean deal, especially in this era.
Oh my God! I mean, I've spoken to sort of like. Alan O'Neill, the Irish former goalkeeper, called in 8 times in the Irish squad, never got a minute on the pitch. And I get the sense from that if he got that a minute or 5 minutes on the pitch, he would have been a senior international. It would change his perspective on his career. It's like Richie Sadler has that one cap, but he's more than most. He's still a senior international. It means a lot. It does have that kind of importance, no more than the 24 team that we were trying to turn into. So having this senior cap, playing on that side in front of that crowd, it's a big deal.
And what got me about Griffiths is when I was researching this match, I was I kept coming across different names. So he was listed in some places as Rob Griffiths, Bob Griffiths, Dick Griffiths, Richard Griffiths, and in one case Tom Griffiths. And I looked this guy up, and when photographs were available, it looked like the same guy. So I went digging on this. I have a little bit of background on him, and he's an interesting guy. So he's born in Dublin. His father's from Cavan. His mother is English. He's raised in the Church of Ireland faith. He is playing his kind of junior football. I think he's working the railways. He's playing for one of the railway teams.
It wasn't unusual to have a few Church of Ireland players at that time. Yeah,
we've mentioned Alex Stevenson and so on.
Yeah.
He gets a trial with Spurs. Doesn't really make it over there. He's in their B team a bit, but doesn't quite make it. Comes back to Ireland. He's playing for Drums. He does quite well with them. And then he's signed by Shelbourne by a guy called Jimmy Commons. And Jimmy Commons is an English manager who comes over, kind of has a bit of success with Shells. But he ends up going back to England to work for Southport, where he's previously managed. So Southport, at this stage, are a third division team. It's a town just outside Liverpool. And Commons has basically liked...
it's in the news recently, actually.
Yeah, sadly, very tragically,
tragically
in the news recently.
Yeah.
But Commons has liked what he's seen in Ireland. He signed several Irish players for the Southport team, one of whom is Bob Griffiths. And he has a really good kind of like couple of seasons at Southport. He's a winger, but he occasionally plays a centre forward. He plays 57 times in under 2 seasons for them. He scores 10 goals. And his form is such that, Walsall, who are same division but doing a little bit better, come in, make a bid for him, sign him. He's just signed for Walsall when he gets called up to the Ireland team. Now, he doesn't have much success at Walsall. He only plays 8 times. He only scores once. And basically, he kind of drops out of football within 2 years of this. But then later on, he kind of settles in England, and he ends up going to, when war breaks out, he joins the RAF. He's not a pilot. He's not the crew. He's ground staff, so he's ground crew. He's the guy who loads bombs into planes. So he serves during the Second World War, and he passes away in 1976. He passes away at the age of 68. Now, we were talking a bit beforehand. We mentioned Alex Stevenson, who also served in the RAF during the war.
Yeah.
Johnny Carey, who we
famously said he was playing in England, therefore they were paying his wages, so he was going to serve them in the war years.
And he fights in Italy and all that sort of stuff in the 40s. And then John Burke, who former Irish international going way back, who plays for Shamrock Rovers. He has an interesting distinction that he serves in both the First and Second World Wars. So that's 4 players I can think of who are Irish internationals who serve in the British Army during the Second World War. There's plenty of Irish internationals who are based still in the League of Ireland who all signed up for the Defence Forces during the emergency, as we called it. But maybe just it's one for listeners. If you know of any others who have maybe served either in the Irish Army during the emergency or served in
the British Army, Allied Army.
Yeah, during the Second World War. It'd be really interesting.
It would be very interesting. Yeah. Okay, so
that's a bit about Bob Griffiths, not Dick Griffiths if you see it written down. A one-cap wonder, but a little bit more about him.
Just on that, and we'll finish on this. The number of first cap players gives the impression that some of the clubs in England weren't really willing to release players. Is this where this kind of pattern starts, or it's a dynamic of this game at this time in December, where English-based clubs, which wouldn't be the majority of players, would come from this team, but certainly the team is made up of first-time players, debutants, because they can't get the more established ones because they won't be released.
And our big name players, Alex Stevenson, Jimmy Dunn, Harry Duggan.
Jimmy Dunn, who's a goal-scoring sensation.
Yeah, Jimmy Dunn, who at this stage of his career is one of the top strikers in the world, not being released. And there, we'll go into it maybe in the next episodes as well, but there is kind of a missive going around to like the Football League clubs that they're encouraged not to release their teams for the FAI. They're encouraged to do it for the IFA. Well, not encouraged, but
I'm assuming that the England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, or the IFA Ireland wouldn't necessarily have fixtures around this time. So it'd be a bit of a pain for the clubs to put a star striker at risk by going over on the mail boat over to Dublin, playing this international against the Hungarians, who have a bit of a, maybe a bit of a rough and tumble reputation. And considering what actually happened to 2 of the players, your prized asset coming back, and it's not.
Yeah.
It's not what left these shores. And anyway, as you have quite rightly said, the English FA were, subtly or maybe not so subtly telling clubs, this FAI outfit are not what we are trying to facilitate.
Yeah, and look, the players who are released, it's Glasgow Celtic's sub goalie. It's Paddy Moore, who's
out of favour at Aberdeen.
Out of favour at Aberdeen, and like even though they have a manager, Paddy Travers, who's very well disposed towards the Irish, and it's guys from Notts County and Walsall, so they're not the Evertons, Liverpools, Man Uniteds, Arsenals of the day. No, okay, right. We leave it there, and next week we are turning our attention to the Swiss and a 1-0 loss away from home on the 5th of May 1935. We're moving into 1935, where we actually play 3 games. One against the Swiss, one against Germany, and one against the Dutch, and we are getting into an elongated losing streak here. But our first continental tour, the lads are going on a bit of a jaunt.
Going on a bit of a jaunt, and there's some excellent photographs here in some of these publications, which are just gorgeous. These big sort of crested shirts and that. I love it.
Just to say with some of the photographs, look, we're on Instagram. Follow us there on each game as it matters, because I'll be sharing maybe some of the advertisements, some of the photographs of the players and teams for these games. So if you want to see what these guys look like, you'll obviously see them on the live stream. But if you're just listening to the podcast and want to see some of these players and some of these clippings that we're talking about, do follow us on social media.
It's each game on its merits. Okay, thank you very much.
Take each game on its merits there.